The room was silent. Ava stood at the altar, heart pounding, waiting for the man who had promised to love her forever. It should have been the happiest moment of her life, a celebration of faith, love, and commitment. Pastor Samuel Williams, her fiancé, was everything she had prayed for, a man of integrity, a pillar of the church, and a soul she thought she understood completely. But as Ava took her first steps toward the future she dreamed of, she had no idea the man standing across from her had a dark secret that would shatter everything. For 3 years, Ava had believed in the fairy tale. Their love, nurtured through shared values and late-night conversations, felt like divine intervention. Samuel was a leader, a man who stood firm in his faith, a man who could be trusted. She had seen him at his best, speaking with compassion and empathy to his congregation. To Ava, he was the embodiment of everything good, everything righteous. But that night, after the reception, the music, the dancing, the laughter, the night they were supposed to begin their lives as husband and wife, the world as Ava knew it began to crumble. When they entered the privacy of their wedding suite, excitement lingered in the air like a sweet scent. Ava, still in her gown, smiled as Samuel unbuttoned his shirt, eager to start their new life. But something about the way he turned toward her caught her attention. It was subtle at first, like a fleeting shadow. There, just beneath his collar, she saw a faint, disturbing movement. At first, she thought it was just her mind playing tricks. The room was dimly lit, and she was overwhelmed by emotion. But as Samuel moved closer, the movement became clearer, tiny, wriggling shapes, moving against his skin. Her heart skipped. Ava's voice barely managed to break through the sudden tension. "Samuel, what is that?" she asked, her voice trembling, a knot of dread forming in her chest. Samuel didn't seem to notice at first, his gaze still warm, still affectionate. "What are you talking about, darling?" he asked, smiling as though nothing was wrong. But Ava couldn't look away. Her hand, almost without thinking, reached toward his collar. As she pulled it down, a chill ran through her body. What she saw made her stomach turn. Maggots. Fat, wriggling maggots crawled across his neck and beneath his shirt, swarming in a macabre dance. Ava staggered back, the blood draining from her face. This wasn't just a nightmare, it was real. And it was happening right in front of her. "Samuel," she gasped, the words escaping in a strangled cry. "What is that? What is going on?" Her breath caught in her throat, her body paralyzed with shock. For a long, dreadful moment, Samuel stood there, his eyes shifting ever so slightly, as though he hadn't expected this reaction. The warmth of his smile began to falter, replaced by something colder, distant. Ava's thoughts spun. How had she never noticed this before? How had this been hidden from her? The man she was about to marry, who had stood before their family and friends as a man of God, was now standing in front of her with maggots crawling across his skin. Her voice cracked as she demanded answers. "Samuel. What is this? What are you hiding?" His face softened, but there was no sense of urgency, no panic. It was as though he was resigned to whatever this was. Slowly, he began to unbutton his shirt, revealing more of the wriggling creatures. Ava's stomach churned, and the world around her felt as though it were closing in. "I've been sick, Ava," Samuel said quietly, the words hanging heavily between them. "But not the kind of illness you can see. This is the result of something I've done. Something I've kept hidden from you." Ava's pulse quickened, her mind struggling to process the flood of information. "What do you mean? What is happening? Please, Samuel, tell me the truth." He took a deep breath, his eyes darkening with regret. "I'm not the man you think I am." Ava Williams, née Parker, was born and raised in the small town of Ashford, a place known for its scenic views and tight-knit community. The youngest of 3 siblings, she grew up in a home filled with love and support. Her parents, though not wealthy, provided a warm and stable environment. Ava's mother, a high school teacher, and her father, a mechanic, instilled in her the values of hard work, kindness, and faith. From a young age, Ava was drawn to the spiritual aspects of life, often attending church services with her family. Her faith became her cornerstone, guiding her decisions and shaping her worldview. Throughout her childhood, Ava was known for her quiet intelligence and empathy. She excelled academically and was always the friend people turned to for advice. However, as much as she was loved by her peers, she struggled with a sense of isolation. Ava had never quite fit in with the popular crowd, preferring the solace of her books or her church's youth group. Her romantic experiences were few, and each one ended in disappointment. She often felt that she was destined for something more, something bigger than the small-town life that seemed to offer little excitement beyond the familiar faces of her neighbors. Ava's life began to change when she attended a church retreat at the age of 24. It was there that she first met Samuel Williams, a man whose presence seemed to capture the attention of everyone in the room. Samuel was 32 at the time, a charismatic and respected pastor, known for his deep knowledge of Scripture and his ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Ava was immediately struck by his sincerity and the warmth that radiated from him. They struck up a conversation that night, and what began as a casual exchange soon blossomed into a deep, spiritual connection. Samuel was everything Ava had ever imagined in a partner: faithful, kind-hearted, and, above all, a man who shared her values. Over the next 3 years, Ava and Samuel grew closer. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, shared beliefs, and a love for the Lord. Samuel's unwavering faith and gentle demeanor made Ava feel cherished, and their relationship felt like a blessing. They spent countless hours talking about their dreams for the future, and Ava was convinced she had found her soulmate. Her family and friends were thrilled when Samuel proposed to her. To them, the couple seemed like the perfect match: Ava, the devout and compassionate woman, and Samuel, the pillar of the church who was admired by all who knew him. Their wedding was a grand affair, with many of the congregation's members attending, witnessing the union of two people who had come together through faith. Ava couldn't have imagined a more perfect beginning to the rest of her life. But that night, the night she was supposed to start her life with Samuel, everything changed. The man she thought she knew, the man she had pledged her life to, revealed something far darker than she could have ever expected. Samuel Williams had always been a man of faith, a man whose life was dedicated to serving the Lord. Born into a family of devout Christians in the bustling city of Atlanta, Georgia, Samuel grew up with strong religious convictions. His father was a pastor, and his mother was an active church volunteer, so the faith was ingrained in him from an early age. Despite the loving home environment, Samuel often felt the weight of expectations placed upon him. His father, a well-respected figure in the church, had always seen potential in him, pushing him to follow in his footsteps. From a young age, Samuel excelled in academics and the arts, earning a scholarship to a prestigious seminary where he quickly became a standout student. He was charming, articulate, and a natural leader, admired by both his professors and peers. His passion for the Scriptures was unmatched, and he soon began leading Bible studies and preaching at local churches, earning a reputation as a gifted preacher. However, behind the polished persona, Samuel had always struggled with a darker side, one that he kept hidden from the public. Despite his outward devotion to the church, Samuel was deeply drawn to the idea of power and control. His early career was marked by a growing desire to be in a position of influence, not just within his church, but in society at large. This ambition led him to make decisions he would later regret, but at the time, it seemed harmless enough. It was during his time in seminary that Samuel met Gregory Turner, a man who would become both a mentor and a dangerous influence in his life. Gregory, a wealthy businessman, introduced Samuel to a world of power and influence far beyond the confines of the church. At first, Samuel was hesitant, but over time, Gregory's promises of wealth, respect, and status proved too alluring to resist. What began as small favors soon escalated to more questionable activities, including participation in secretive rituals that Samuel thought would remain buried in the past. As Samuel's relationship with Gregory deepened, so too did his involvement in dark practices that conflicted with everything he had once stood for. Despite the guilt gnawing at him, Samuel pushed forward, believing that the rewards would outweigh the consequences. The maggots, he would later claim, were a physical manifestation of the darkness that had consumed him. He had made a deal with forces he didn't understand, and now, it seemed, the price was being paid. When Samuel met Ava, he truly believed he had found redemption. Her purity, her unwavering faith, seemed like a gift from God, a chance to start over. For a while, he managed to keep his demons at bay, convincing himself that his new life as a pastor and husband would erase the mistakes of his past. But the maggots were a constant reminder of the cost of his decisions, and no matter how hard he tried to bury them, they always resurfaced. Ava's family played an important role in her life. Her mother, Caroline, was a strong woman who had always encouraged Ava to follow her heart, but also warned her about the dangers of blind faith. Her father, Thomas, was a quiet but steadfast man who believed in the power of prayer and hard work. Though they were supportive of Ava's relationship with Samuel, they had always been a bit skeptical of how quickly their daughter had fallen for him. Still, they trusted her judgment, and their love for Samuel was evident when they welcomed him into their home. Samuel's best friend, Marcus, was another key figure in his life. A fellow pastor, Marcus had always been a source of support for Samuel, though he too had noticed subtle changes in his friend over the years. Marcus was more reserved than Samuel, and he had grown increasingly concerned about the path his friend was taking. But like everyone else, he was blinded by Samuel's charm and the image he projected to the world. The evening air was thick with anticipation, a strange mixture of excitement and anxiety hanging in the atmosphere. The grand church in Ashford, with its tall, Gothic spires and stained-glass windows, had been transformed into a dream venue for Ava and Samuel's wedding. The candlelight flickered gently, casting warm, golden glows on the faces of the guests, whose smiles were wide and hearts full. The reception hall was decorated with pristine white flowers, and soft music played in the background as laughter and chatter filled the air. It should have been perfect, a night of celebration and joy. But something felt off. As the last song played and the guests began to filter out, the night sky outside grew darker, its deep blue hue slowly giving way to the quiet of the evening. Samuel and Ava, now husband and wife, had just entered their private wedding suite at the luxurious hotel nearby. It was a serene space. Neatly furnished, with large windows that opened to a breathtaking view of the town below. The moonlight poured in, bathing the room in a soft, ethereal glow. The quiet hum of the air conditioning was the only sound that broke the stillness. For a moment, Ava allowed herself to bask in the joy of the day, her heart swelling with love and excitement for the future. She had married the man of her dreams, the man she had prayed for. The world outside was perfect, and for a few fleeting moments, everything felt right. But beneath the surface of this tranquility, there was a subtle shift, an unease that Ava couldn't shake. As Samuel led her toward the bed, a sense of dread crept in, though she couldn't place its origin. The hours of celebration, the glimmer of perfection, it all felt like a facade. She should have been excited, ecstatic even, to start this new chapter. And yet, there was a quiet whisper in the back of her mind telling her that something was wrong. It began as a small, almost imperceptible detail, the movement near Samuel's collar. At first, Ava thought it was just the dim lighting playing tricks on her eyes. She brushed it off, dismissing it as nothing more than a momentary lapse in focus, her mind still swirling with thoughts of the wedding and the night ahead. But as Samuel drew closer to her, that small movement intensified. The growing unease in Ava's chest flared into a knot of panic. She couldn't ignore it any longer. The room, which had once felt so serene and beautiful, now felt claustrophobic. It was as if the walls were closing in on her, the night that should have been the beginning of a new life turning into a suffocating nightmare. The maggots, small and disgusting, wriggling across Samuel's skin, were the tipping point. But before that moment, the warning signs had been there. The subtle tension in Samuel's smile, his reluctance to engage in certain topics, his occasional moments of distance, Ava had brushed them off, convinced that it was just the natural hesitations of a man about to take a lifelong commitment. But now, standing in the dim light of their wedding suite, Ava realized that those small signs had all pointed to something darker. The warmth of the room no longer felt comforting, and the perfect night she had envisioned was slipping away, replaced by a growing sense of dread. The cracks in their relationship, which she had once ignored or failed to notice, now seemed undeniable. The man she had married, the man who had been her beacon of faith, was someone else entirely. And as the maggots continued to crawl, the reality of what she had just witnessed hit Ava with full force. Her world was no longer the same, and she could never unsee what had been revealed. Ava's pulse thundered in her ears, her body frozen in a state of disbelief. The dim light of their wedding suite now seemed oppressive, suffocating. The flickering candles cast strange shadows on the walls, making the room feel like a distorted reflection of the reality she thought she knew. She tried to make sense of it, to rationalize the scene before her, but nothing fit. Nothing made sense. "Samuel," she whispered, her voice shaking, barely above a breath. "What is happening? What is that on your skin?" At first, Samuel didn't seem to hear her. He was still standing there, his posture stiff, almost too still. His eyes, once warm and comforting, now held something unreadable. A hollow emptiness that made her feel as if she were staring at a stranger. Ava took a step closer, her feet unsteady beneath her as though the room itself was shifting. "Samuel, please," she repeated, her voice louder this time. "What is going on?" She reached for him, her hand trembling as she tried to tug at the collar of his shirt. But the moment her fingers brushed against his skin, the truth hit her like a slap. She recoiled in horror, her stomach twisting violently. The movement under his shirt was unmistakable, fat, wriggling maggots, crawling across his neck. The sight was too much to process. Her mind, usually sharp and composed, couldn't find a way to explain this, no way to justify what she was seeing. For a long, excruciating moment, they both stood in silence. Samuel's expression was distant, but there was a flicker of something, a glimmer of regret, or perhaps shame, that passed through his eyes. Yet, there was no sense of urgency, no panic. His lack of reaction only made the situation worse. Ava's chest tightened. "What is this? What is happening to you?" she asked, her voice now a frantic cry. The room felt like it was closing in on her, the air thick with the suffocating weight of the unknown. Samuel's lips curled into the faintest of smiles, though it lacked the warmth she had come to expect from him. "It's nothing," he said, his voice low, almost resigned. "It's just something I've been dealing with for a while now. Something I didn't want to ruin our night with." Ava's legs felt weak beneath her, but she managed to step back, unable to tear her eyes away from the grotesque sight. The maggots, squirming and writhing across his skin, seemed to mock her. Samuel, the man she had trusted, the man she had vowed to spend her life with, was hiding something far darker than she could have imagined. "No," she said, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "This is not nothing. This is not what I signed up for. This isn't who you are. This isn't who you were." Samuel's face shifted, a flicker of pain crossing his features before it quickly disappeared, replaced by something cold and detached. "Ava," he said softly, his voice heavy with guilt. "I never wanted you to find out this way. But the truth is, I'm not the man you think I am." The weight of his words hit Ava like a ton of bricks, and for the first time, she felt truly afraid. Not just of the maggots crawling across his skin, but of the man standing before her, the man she thought she knew, the man she had married. The man who, now, seemed like a complete stranger. Ava took another step back, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of what was happening. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible, a mix of disbelief and desperation. "Who are you? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me?" Samuel's eyes darkened, and for the first time since the night had begun, Ava saw something resembling fear in them. "I've been hiding it from you," he confessed, his voice shaky. "For years. I thought I could control it. I thought I could bury it. But it's gotten worse. The maggots, they're a manifestation of something I've done. Something I can't undo. Ava's heart stopped. The room swirled around her as she tried to understand his words. She felt a deep, gnawing pit in her stomach. What did you do, Samuel? What did you get yourself into? Samuel's face twisted with regret as he slowly unbuttoned the rest of his shirt, revealing the full extent of the horror. The maggots were everywhere, crawling down his chest, spreading over his arms and neck. The sight made Ava's blood run cold, but the worst part was the coldness in Samuel's eyes, the detachment, as if he had long accepted the truth of his actions. I've made deals with people I shouldn't have, he confessed, his voice hollow. I've done things I'm not proud of. I thought I could control it, that I could make it all go away. But I can't. The maggots, they're the result of the darkness inside of me. They're a sign of the choices I've made, the price I've paid. Ava stumbled backward, her head spinning as his words began to sink in. The horror of the moment, the overwhelming sense of betrayal, made it impossible to breathe. The man she had married, the man she had trusted with her heart and soul, was not who she thought he was. He was someone else entirely, someone capable of unspeakable things. No, she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. This can't be happening. This isn't real. But it was. The reality of the situation crashed down on her like a wave, and Ava could no longer hold back the tears. You're not the man I thought you were, she sobbed, her chest heaving with the weight of the truth. Samuel's expression remained unchanged. I know, he whispered. I've failed you, Ava. I've failed us. In that moment, Ava knew. This was it. The life she had dreamed of, the future she had imagined with Samuel, was gone. The love she had once felt for him was replaced by a deep, gut-wrenching disgust. I can't be with you, she cried, her voice breaking. I can't live like this. I can't stay with you. And with those words, Ava turned and fled, leaving Samuel standing alone in the dimly lit room, the maggots still wriggling on his skin. A grotesque reminder of the darkness that had destroyed everything. Ava's escape from the wedding suite was just the beginning of a much darker journey, one that would unfold over the following days and weeks. The moment she fled, running through the halls of the hotel and into the cold, night air, she knew her life would never be the same. Her wedding day, once meant to mark the beginning of a lifelong commitment, had ended in a revelation so grotesque, so horrifying, that nothing could ever erase it from her mind. Her thoughts were jumbled as she wandered through the streets, disoriented by the flood of emotions that surged through her. The man she had trusted, the man she had married, had just revealed that he was a complete stranger, a man hiding secrets darker than she could have ever imagined. The maggots on his skin were the least of it. The darkness he confessed to, those hidden deals, the unspeakable things he had done, left Ava feeling empty, broken, and terrified. But she couldn't shake the overwhelming need to understand what had happened to him. What had Samuel done? What had driven him to hide his true self for so long? By the time she reached her parents' house, her world was unrecognizable. She had no words for what had happened. The images of Samuel, standing there, cold and unrepentant, haunted her every step. It was her mother, Caroline, who first noticed the shift in her daughter's demeanor. Ava's silence was deafening. "Sweetheart," Caroline said gently, placing a hand on Ava's trembling arm, "what happened? Where's Samuel?" Ava opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. The images, the horror, the betrayal, it was too much. She could hardly speak without choking on the truth. But her mother didn't press her. Instead, she pulled Ava into her arms, holding her tightly, giving her the space to process. That night, Ava didn't sleep. Neither did her mother, who stayed close, offering silent support. The next morning, Ava made a call to the police. She didn't know what she expected them to do. Samuel was a respected figure in the community, and surely no one would believe her accusations without evidence. But the story had to be told. She couldn't carry the weight of it alone. The police arrived at the hotel later that afternoon, and Ava, with a heavy heart, described what had happened. She recounted the events of the night, but even she couldn't fully process the absurdity of it. A wedding turned into a nightmare, a man who had been a trusted pastor turning into a figure from a horror story. The investigation, though, did not move quickly. There were no immediate signs of foul play, no blood, no obvious crime scene. And yet, the detective assigned to the case, Detective Laura Simmons, could sense that there was more beneath the surface. Something about the situation didn't sit right. It wasn't just the maggots, which had been confirmed through medical reports, but the lack of urgency from Samuel himself that troubled her. When she interviewed him, he was oddly calm, as though the revelation of his dark past wasn't as jarring as it should have been. His cool demeanor raised red flags. "He's hiding something," Laura muttered to herself as she reviewed the initial statements. "And I need to find out what." The weeks that followed were filled with dead ends and frustration. Ava's family kept a low profile, unwilling to speak publicly about what had happened. But Ava's thoughts never strayed from Samuel. She needed to know more, needed to understand how his past could have led to this moment. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story, more she needed to uncover. The police began their search, tracing Samuel's movements over the past several years. They spoke to church members, old friends, and colleagues. And while most confirmed what Ava had once believed, that Samuel was a kind, genuine man, there were also whispers. There were rumors, small, subtle comments about his strange behavior over the years, about his long hours at the church office, about his friendships with certain individuals who were now out of the picture. One name kept resurfacing, Gregory Turner. Gregory Turner, the wealthy businessman who had once taken Samuel under his wing, was a figure that many described as shady. No one could provide a solid lead on what their relationship had been, but the rumors alone were enough to warrant further investigation. The police attempted to track Gregory down, but he had mysteriously vanished just a week before the wedding. His business dealings were untraceable, and no one seemed to know where he had gone. Meanwhile, Ava's emotional state deteriorated. She was consumed with guilt. Why hadn't she seen the signs earlier? Why had she ignored the subtle hints that something was wrong? The days dragged on, each one blending into the next. The investigation seemed to stall, and as the months went by, it became clear that no one had any answers. One afternoon, while going through Samuel's old personal belongings in the church office, Ava made a startling discovery. Hidden inside a drawer was an old notebook, its pages filled with strange symbols and cryptic phrases. As she flipped through the pages, a chill ran down her spine. Some of the symbols looked eerily familiar, she had seen them in the Bible, but twisted, perverted. The last few pages were filled with unsettling notes about dark pacts and the price of power. Ava's stomach lurched as she realized what she had found. This wasn't just a man struggling with inner demons. This was a man who had been involved in something far more dangerous. The maggots on Samuel's skin were not just a symptom of sickness, but a manifestation of the darkness he had unleashed. The discovery of the notebook sent shockwaves through the investigation. The police brought in a specialist in occult practices to examine the symbols, but they still couldn't piece together exactly what had happened. They began to suspect that Samuel's relationship with Gregory Turner was not just one of business, but something much more sinister. Meanwhile, Samuel's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He had vanished after the wedding night, leaving behind a trail of confusion. No one knew where he had gone, and there were no clues as to his whereabouts. Ava's fear and guilt continued to gnaw at her, and the emotional toll of the search weighed heavily on her. Her life had been ripped apart, and the more she uncovered, the less she understood. Every lead felt like a dead end, every clue like a piece of a puzzle that would never fit together. The investigation seemed to go in circles, each answer raising more questions than it solved. And yet, Ava knew one thing for certain: there was something dark, something terrible, that Samuel had kept hidden. And until that darkness was fully revealed, her life would remain in limbo. Months had passed since the night of the wedding, but Ava's mind remained trapped in that moment, the memory of Samuel standing before her, confessing his dark past. The investigation had stalled. The authorities had done their best to track Samuel, to uncover what had happened, but each day that passed only deepened the mystery. There were no more leads, no fresh clues. Everyone around her had begun to move on, but Ava couldn't. She couldn't let go of the feeling that something crucial was still missing, that the answers she needed were just out of reach. Then, one afternoon, as Ava was going through old church records in a last-ditch attempt to find something, anything, that might give her a clearer picture of Samuel's past, she found it, a small, weathered envelope, tucked inside a hidden compartment in one of the office drawers. It was unmarked, its edges frayed as if it had been there for years. A cold chill ran down Ava's spine as she slowly opened it, her hands trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly in half. The paper was old, the ink faded in places, but what caught Ava's attention were the words, written in a hand she didn't recognize, "The price of power is steep. One day, you'll regret it, but it will be too late." Ava's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the words, a wave of confusion and dread washing over her. Who had written this? And why was it in Samuel's office? It was a warning, a message meant for someone, but who? As her eyes scanned the page, something else caught her attention, a name, scrawled hastily at the bottom. Gregory Turner. Her stomach twisted at the sight of that name. She had already known about Samuel's connection to Gregory, but this was different. This was a direct warning. A chilling reminder that whatever Samuel had gotten himself into, it wasn't over yet. Ava's breath quickened as she realized the gravity of what she was holding. The envelope had been hidden away for a reason. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a clue that connected the dots between Samuel and the dark forces he had been involved with. But what did it mean? What had Samuel gotten into that had caused him to hide this from everyone, even Ava? The discovery sent Ava into a spiral of confusion. She had spent months blaming herself, wondering if she had missed the signs, if she had somehow overlooked the truth. But now, she realized that Samuel hadn't just kept secrets from her, he had been hiding something far more dangerous from everyone. And this note, this warning, was the key to everything. Desperate for answers, Ava took the envelope to Detective Laura Simmons, who had been working tirelessly on the case. When Ava handed it over, Lara's expression shifted from curiosity to shock as she read the note. "This changes everything," Lara muttered, her voice low, her eyes scanning the words again. "This isn't just a confession from Samuel. This is evidence that someone else is involved. Someone with a lot more power than we thought." Ava could hardly believe it. For months, she had believed that Samuel was the sole architect of the chaos that had destroyed their lives, but now, with this note, it was clear that there was something much bigger at play. The connection to Gregory Turner, who had been missing for months, raised even more questions. Was Gregory still alive? Had he been involved in the strange, occult practices Samuel had hinted at? Lara's face hardened as she looked up from the note. "We need to find Gregory. He's the key. If Samuel was trying to protect him or cover up something, this might be bigger than we thought." The investigation, once stalled, was now set to take a new direction. The piece of paper in Ava's hand, so innocuous at first, had become the spark that ignited a firestorm of questions. Samuel's disappearance, his strange behavior, and the maggots on his skin, all of it now had a new layer of meaning. It wasn't just about a man who had made dark choices, it was about something much more sinister that had ensnared him, and Ava, in its grasp. Ava's emotions were torn. Part of her wanted to confront Samuel, to demand the truth from him, but another part feared what she might uncover. The man she had married, the man she had trusted, was now a shadow of the person she thought he was. And Gregory Turner? The man whose name she had found written in the note. He was the missing link in this tangled web, and Ava was determined to find him. The discovery of the note had changed everything. The truth, as Ava had feared, was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The search for Samuel had led her down a path she never could have foreseen, and the revelation that someone else was pulling the strings only made the mystery deeper. For the first time in months, Ava felt a flicker of hope that the truth might still be out there, waiting to be uncovered. But as the investigation picked up momentum, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that the answers she sought might come at a far greater cost than she was prepared to pay. Thank you so much for tuning in to this shocking true crime story. If you found this twist as unsettling as we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping updates. We want to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us. And stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll uncover even more dark secrets and mysterious twists. You won't want to miss it.